Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you all. As you can appreciate, our special guest, for those of you who don't know, is obviously Andy Street, Mayor of West Midlands. Not me, that's him. He's a very busy man with lots on to talk about. And so we firstly very appreciate you coming to see us. But also,
my pleasure, I wouldn't have missed it.
But because of that, Andy, we were due to have him till 4, but we've got him to 10 to 4, so we've got 20 minutes.
I'm sorry, but
that's
genuinely, the issue of the week has caused me to something.
Of course. Obviously, we wouldn't have started here 24 hours ago, but we are where we are. I mean, just say something about where you think we are in the conversation, and more particularly, because we've heard this a lot, just reinforce why HS2 and the decisions or not are really important for West Midlands, because it gets lost in that. It gets a national conversation. So say, look, because it does matter to your area.
Thank you very much.
Let him speak.
He will speak.
He will. So let's just say, first of all, I did not expect this conference to be dominated by HS2. And when I arrived here on Sunday afternoon, I did not expect that I'd be doing an impromptu press conference and leading the 10 o'clock news. So, you know, it's regrettable, really, that we're in this position. And better people than me will answer the question, how on earth have we got to this position? But let me just explain why I feel as strongly as I do. And actually, Andrew, I'm going to, if you don't mind, slightly challenge your question.
Okay.
Because I'm not actually doing this just because I believe it's the right thing for the West Midlands. I'm doing this because I think it's the right thing for Britain. Yeah. And actually, as a senior Conservative representative, somebody who's not in the cabinet and whipped by the party nationally needs to stand up and make the case. Mm-hmm. And I think the case has got 3 key ingredients in it. First of all, there is an argument around connectivity and capacity on the railway. There always has been. Mm-hmm. That has not gone away. And once you build the spine of the transport connectivity, you then build the local systems off it. But it has become about far more than a railway. It's actually become about, can Britain do serious, difficult things? Yeah. And if I just put to you, as I said to the media last night, we're supposed to be a leading member of the G7, and we can't even build a railway between London and Manchester. It is actually laughable. And the idea that's been doing the rounds, that HS2 would become a branch line from Old Oak Common to Curzon Street in Birmingham, would be forever an edifice to our failure. And then the last reason that I think it's so important is there have been hundreds of millions of pounds, if not billions of pounds, already committed to the UK on the promise of this. And you cannot, as a British government, suddenly say, I've changed my mind, we're not doing it, thank you for your investment decision, but we don't do it. This is about our word as an international country. And the offer that we've made to the Prime Minister is very clear, with the support of a lot of private businesses, some of whom I note are in the room, but there are many more behind the scenes who are saying to me, Andy, this is about our word as an investment destination. That's what this has become about.
And you've said a little bit about, you recognise the need to get a grip, as
yes.
Your words, and as always, which is very much you, a pragmatic, solution-oriented individual that tries to look for how to make progress on things. You then said, there are ways that we can make progress on this, on the project, which has slightly different elements. Can you just say a little bit more about
of course.
Your thinking on that?
Of course. So I'm glad you pulled out the first bit, because I agree with the Prime Minister here, the first point, and this is an important point. He is right to say the management of this project has been like a runaway train. I haven't seen all the numbers, he and his team have, but unlike in Boris's time, they've not been shared with me. Interesting. But the question then is, what do you do about these runaway numbers? And my recommendation to him is that the first thing you do is you press firmly on with stage 1 as quickly as you can to begin to get benefits and actually prove to people this is the right thing to do, and then the economic case is also sounder. And that includes, by the way, building Euston. The idea that we scrap Euston when there's a bloody hole in the ground. I mean, again, when you just put it like that, this is for the birds. And lots of the Euston cost, by the way, is dealing with the conventional railway, not HS2. But it just illustrates the paucity of the thinking around this. And then but the real issue is, what do you do north of Birmingham? And my suggestion is rather than scrap it, get a grip of it, means you pause all expenditure. Brackets, there was to be done in the next 2 years anyway. So this notion, again, it's one of the lies going around this conference, that there's money to be saved, that every MP can invest in their backyard. Not a penny was to be spent north of Birmingham in the next 2 years. So you pause, and then you bring in the best of the private sector from around the world to say how we should be doing this. And let me just give you a few details of this. First, there's 3 parts to this as well. First of all, who's actually paying for this? The answer is the British government is paying everything. How do you think high-speed rail is paid for in other countries in the world? It's often paid for by the private sector or a long loan from a sovereign wealth fund or something like that. That's how it works in France. So one of the members of this private sector consortium has come forward is the company that actually arranges these loans in other places. The second question you ask is, how is this operated and what is the private sector doing? There's lots of West Midlands in the room, familiar faces, so I'll use this point to illustrate this. We are building in central Birmingham a beautiful station, Curzon Street Station, architect's dream, but it is a station. When you go, and it's on the public balance sheet, when you go and look at a high-speed line in Hong Kong or in Japan, what do you see? You don't even see the station. You see a commercial operation. Historically shops, much more likely now offices, in the future it'll be wet labs. So for goodness sake, bring the private sector actually in to run some of this, including the stations. And then the third part of this is then you actually say to those who are contracted to do it, what is the best way of doing this? Where are the trade-offs over speed, design, contractual arrangements? And I've had lots of people come forward and say, there's £1 billion to spend there, there's £1 billion to save there, £1 billion there, and we can add those up. So it's ownership and operation, it's funding, and it's the private sector around design. And that's why I'm very pleased to say this consortium is led by Arup, and Arup are the global leaders in this. And you can work out where the senior partner's from. But you know, these are really, really experienced companies that have stepped forward. Arup, Siemens, EY, and perhaps many, many others. But perhaps the last important point here, Andrew, just to think about the politics, it's quite unusual that private companies are prepared to come forward and say the Prime Minister's getting this wrong, and to put their heads above the parapet. And I've spent the last few days trying to assemble this coalition to help the government make the right decision.
Yeah. And I watched you on Newsnight, on many other so I watched you on Newsnight and many other.
I didn't know I was on there.
You were on many other news outlets as well. So not that I'm preferencing any one particular channel, just so anybody gets the wrong impression. But there was also on there others saying the Prime Minister's right. This is no longer a relevant project. Times have moved on. There are better options for that money. What you, and they were national politicians. They were mayors, they were local folk. I mean, what would you say to those sets of arguments?
Well, the first I'd say is some of them say railway use isn't recovering. That's the times have moved on point. Yeah. That is categorically wrong. It has not recovered in terms of commuting, but if you look at long distance use of rail, it has definitely done. And we're still only 2 years after the end of the COVID, and if you look at the projections, it is very clear. Look at the airline industry, the desire to travel has not changed. So one of their underlying points is just spurious. The second thing I would say is this: we want to spend it on a metro in West Yorkshire, I don't know, whatever in Manchester, a bus in Stoke. It's not the alternative to HS2. Yes, every one of our city regions, and we've talked about this often, has got to improve its productivity by better connectivity within it. But that is not what HS2 is about. HS2 is about the connectivity across the whole country, driving in inward investment to these locations. And then you put the local connectivity hanging off the spine of the national transport infrastructure. So they're talking about something completely different. If the exam question is how do you improve the productivity on Stoke-on-Trent, yes, it's investment in local transport. If the exam question is how on earth do you improve productivity across the whole of the country, the connectivity between different regions is the right answer. And the last thing I would just say to you is this, and you might not think this is the right thing to say at a politically neutral panel, as you always are, Andrew, and you are expert at this. But this is a Conservative conference, and the reason I feel so passionate about this is, well, one of the reasons, I just think we're about to make an incredible political gaffe. Every Labour MP in the North is lining up tomorrow to say, and pardon my slightly bad language in here, the Tories have come to Manchester to shaft the North. Is that really what we want to offer to our opponents, or is there not a better answer?
And are you happy to take some questions from the audience?
Yes.
Andy? I mean, we'll get that. One last question, without obviously, which you wouldn't anyway, but I mean, do you have any indication as to what you propose? So you don't, as always, you don't just complain, you offer an alternative.
Yes.
But do you have any indication as to whether there is a level of engagement with...
Not yet.
So we wait and see.
Yes.
So we don't know.
But we do know this, and Chris Mason and I were on the World at One at lunchtime, and Chris reported this very accurately, so this is him, not me. Prime Minister said on the media round this morning that no decision has been taken, and as far as I'm concerned, until that changes, we're still in there making our suggestions.
Very good. Okay, now look, 10 minutes. Don't start speeching, right? Short questions, otherwise we're done. Yeah.
Could you just go into a bit more detail about that consortium you mentioned led by Arab? What actually are they sort of working on? What are they trying to sort of...
Let me take a couple, because then we could just deal with it. So gentleman there, lady next. So yeah, you there. Yeah.
Andy, another difficult topic. What next for our city of Birmingham following declaration of section 114? How does the city dig itself out of the hole?
Okay. Yes.
Victoria Derbyshire on Newsnight last night asked a Tory MP put a lamb to the slaughter. Given that we've had Tory government for 13 years, every month the Transport Department gets the figures every single month, exactly what is being spent and how far overrun it is.
Yeah.
Is it really credible to say they've only just noticed after 13 years that this is being overspent?
Okay,
Consortium.
Let's deal with Birmingham first, because and I can be very, very quick on that. I mean, let's just be clear on this. This is terribly, terribly bad news for brand Birmingham, brand West Midlands, and I take no pleasure in it. I'm just concerned about the citizens of our city. But there are two answers. Number one, at the same time as that's been happening, in the words of the FT, not my words, council goes bust, the city around it booms. Now, Birmingham is not booming, but it's doing okay. And so the point is very clear. This is about a council, not the city. And we have to send the message out round the world. It's why tomorrow, and you can have this on the record, I will not be here. Whatever the Prime Minister says, I will be in Munich, banging the drum for Birmingham and the West Midlands for inward investment. So don't be obsessed with the problem of the city. City council, keep talking about the economy of the place. The answer, though, there is only one answer as to what has to happen. Commissioners have to come in and they have to sell the assets to deal with this debt, to get the council finances back in the right place. It's a tragedy, but it is the only answer. Should the DFT have known about this? Of course they should. And I frankly do not know what the reporting arrangements are around this. I can't possibly. But the straight answer question is yes, of course they should. And to be fair, though, to the Secretary of State, Mark Harper, he did in March rephase the scheme in order to get the cash expenditure every year back within his budget envelope. So it's not fair to say Mark hasn't been active in managing this. But then, of course, we have this...
Yes.
Exactly, but that's fair what you say. Now then, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but the answer to the question is, are they doing anything yet as a formal consortium? No, because I only started to approach people on Friday. But they are all saying, we are ready, waiting, and we will bring a different expertise into this. So some will look at funding mechanisms, some will look at the contracting piece, some will look at the ownership pieces. So the answer is no one is doing anything formally as a group yet, but they are all thinking about suggestions they would like to bring to the table, and it is put as an offer to the government, please invite us to do this. And frankly, we've been at this since 2009. It does seem extremely odd that this offer might not be taken off the table if it's a matter of a small number of months to examine what could be done.
Yeah,
let's take a couple more. So we're going to take a gentleman there, a gentleman there. Yeah.
And mandatory reservation rents. There's people being evicted across the West Midlands through Section 21 no-fault evictions.
Yeah.
Government promised to end them 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you agree they need to get on with it?
Yes. I don't think that's a very difficult question, and I've been very vociferous on this. They also, by the way, one of the underlying problems in the West Midlands? They also need to get much more of a grip in terms of the enforcement of the exempt accommodation. That is the scourge in the West Midlands, and we made direct contributions to the Select Committee on that. The previous Housing Minister was very muscular about that. I want to see that followed through, and perhaps the most important thing I want to see done is more affordable and social homes built. Now we've got control over that project through the devolution deal.
Very good. Yes, sir.
I'm from Cemex. We're a global manufacturer, we've got it based in Birmingham in the West Midlands.
I know, I've been there.
I'm happily regarding the consortium and as a business who are going to be massively impacted by HS2, we're happy to support you.
Thank you. Would you like to go public and tell everybody?
I will speak to my boss.
Speak to your boss. I want names.
Yes.
The names are coming in. More who'll go public today.
You can have a massive consortium by the end of the day. I want you to take your time on that. You may be culling people.
I may have them all lined up for tonight's press conference.
Yeah, quite. You'll be auctioning them in a minute. Who wants to be on the consortium? What can you offer us? Go on, sorry.
Anything else? Any other hands? If not, go on. Front row and back row.
Yeah.
I might be a bit sceptical, but I can't believe in this day and age an official from the department comes to Downing Street with a photographable briefing paper that is taking us all out for a
That's where it all started.
It all started there, but it's not possible. Everybody knows about that now. So we're all being set up, in my opinion, for a great big rescue announcement tomorrow.
Well, we'll
You
see.
are entitled to your...
You will, yeah. You will be proven right or you will be proven wrong,
I know.
one way or another. But it's a provable statement, so that's good. Yes, so brief.
You've been in office for quite some time now. Are there any powers that you wish you'd got that you've seen introduced elsewhere in the country?
Yes.
Or any powers that you wish you'd got anyway?
Yes and yes. Let me just... I will answer a question head on in just 1 second, but I'll say something that might surprise you first of all. The answer is yes, and I'll give you a minute, but I'm not obsessed with that, because actually the government have just given us, in our Trailblazer devolution deal, the same as Greater Manchester, an enormous opportunity. And actually this is a real test for the West Midlands as to whether we can step up to it. And this is a journey towards devolution over time. We've only been at this for 6 years. There's been a Lord Mayor of Coventry for 800 years. And so there is really something here about don't keep asking like Oliver, but actually demonstrate that what you've got you can use. And I'm a great believer that this will go steadily. And actually I'm very grateful to Michael Gove for getting us as far as we've got. But the one power I am really determined to have is the policing power. If you did a piece of research across the West Midlands and said, what is the thing that people are most worried about, it would not be homelessness, however bad that is, it would not be finding a job, it would not be fares on public transport, it would be crime. And we have failed to tackle the issues around crime in the West Midlands over the last decade. And I'm being partisan, sorry Andrew, I do not believe the series of Labour Police and Crime Commissioners have got any grip of this at all. And of course, it is exactly the flip of all the economic outcomes. So that's the one we want.
Have you been offered that power? It's not quite that
It's not quite that straightforward. If the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill goes through unamended, we will then be able to apply to the Home Secretary is the way it is. Right.
One last question. Yeah, go on. One last question. Go on, and you ask it. I was going to ask one.
Caitlin at Politics Home. I might have misunderstood what you just said, but I think you just suggested there that you've seen more figures for HS2 under Boris Johnson's government than you have now. Would you say your relationship with this government is different to Conservative governments that have gone in over the last 5 years?
You're extrapolating far too much there. I mean, the point is really much narrower than that. It's a good try, but you're wrong. The point is that when Boris committed to this during the hustings in 2019, actually, and then he followed it through July hustings, January decision. So there was a 6-month process and I was involved in that process as the member of the Oakerby Review. So my point was simply, I knew all the numbers then. I don't know all the updates over the last 4 years.
But is your relationship with this government different than your one with governments that have gone previously?
Of course, because there's different personalities. That doesn't mean it's better or worse or anything else. I mean, Laurie Bin, Theresa May and Boris Johnson were hardly the same characters, and you don't therefore to have a different relationship. Yeah. Okay,
Very good.
you won't
Go on.
find what you're fishing
No.
for. Right.
Anyway, Andy, please join me.